college football week 1 of 2023. We did not do week 0 because, well, I don't like the whole principle of it. So also we talked a good game. We just didn't walk the walk. We had to show no one showed up. It wasn't like someone showed up and one person was here and just did nobody showed. But we did the show last year the same time, 1 o'clock on Wednesdays. So we'll stick to it this year, 1 o'clock, about 1 o'clock on Wednesdays. Of course, it's our first show, so bear with me, bear with us. A lot of things have changed over the course of the year, but one thing that hasn't changed, Chris Ruffolo is back. Chris, how's it going?
Doing well. If this morning was any indication, we're in for a great college football season. I'm excited. Like you said, we didn't have the greatest week 0, but hey, it's like a lot of teams. We got to shake the rust off, and now we get into it. And we start to pick up steam.
We talk about it all the time. It's not where you start; it's where you finish. You don't win championships in week 0, that's for sure. I've come from off the pace on many a leaderboard, so I had no problems with it. The thing is, I didn't listen to myself, and usually that's a good thing, but in this case, it was a bad thing. I always say, tread lightly, maybe pick one game, week 0, and instead I picked 3. I lost them all. Ron hit them both. So, what they call that? It's kind of like the Danny Partridge syndrome. He peaked, too early.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'll take those two. But like you said, you can't win a championship in the first week, but you can certainly take yourself out of it. But I think we all still tread lightly in week 0. We didn't go crazy, and I think week 1, same thing. I mean, it's a loaded card, but there's a lot of games that I'm certainly passing right away, just looking at them on the surface. So I'm excited though.
Well, the way this show is going to work, and we're going to do this way every week, we're going to pick out about the 10 to 15 most popular games or biggest games on the board. And then inside of that, we'll talk about other games that the guys want to talk about. Ron always loves the off-the-chart games. His college football rundown, while he only had a few games to pick from in week 0, my guess is this week we're going to see a lot of these little schools rear their heads. And, any FCS, FBS on the rundown this week?
No, none of that. No,
None
maybe
of
in the
that
future,
garbage. There's always some of those, though, that are super appealing. And I'm going to certainly be looking for some of those if I could find them.
The only problem with those, at least for week 1, is usually those lines come out like Friday night or Saturday morning. So right now, most of those don't have lines out.
Well, I'll be on the lookout for them.
Yeah.
We got conference shakeups this season, and then, of course, conference shakeups on the way. We knew about the shakeup in the Big 12 coming. I didn't realize there was an overlap period of the new teams coming in and the old teams leaving. This will be the only year of that. Interesting scheduling. UCF has Oklahoma. We talked about this morning on the schedule. Does not have Texas on the regular season schedule. I didn't see BYU, but they've played Texas a ton. So I'm going to guess they have Texas. I don't know.
Yep, they're at Texas. Yep.
Yep, they've played them a ton over the years, even being outside of the division. And, man, you kind of wish Taysom Hill was still there for that one. Mm. I mean, he was there for 9.5 years, so he certainly had his chances to face him. Chris, I know you'll have some guys this season that'll be missed. I know that Clayton Tune, I saw him in one of the NFL preseason games. I don't know if he's stuck, but, yeah, he had a good run, but it's all over. But got Harris, or is that his name, from UTSA, back for season 7. Lucky 7 is what they call it. Is that the medical red shirt super senior? I mean, what do you?
It might be.
How do you get there?
It might be. And I think there's another one. I want to say it's Zion Webb from Jacksonville State, if I'm not mistaken. He had I think he's in his 7th year too.
So if he's in his 7th year, you figured he graduated high school at 18. That means he's only 2 years away from being age eligible to become a BYU freshman quarterback.
He's old enough to buy the Schlitz for the team party after the game. So
there's no Schlitz at the BYU games. It's a clown question.
Diet Coke.
Yeah, so sorry.
DC on ice.
Well, we got started on the first game. We'll cover 2 of the Thursday games. I don't think we have any of the Friday games on this week's show. We will in the future. Probably next week where there is no Thursday game, we'll cover the Friday game. There's only one on Friday, so people will care about that. I'm not saying tomorrow's games are bad. In fact, some of them are better than today's. My guys are playing tomorrow. So, we all know there'll be a class act. Ron's a Florida graduate. I'm a Miami guy. But two teams that kind of really, last year was a really down year for Florida and Miami, but two teams that I expect to see at least some bounce. Florida's second year under this head coach, but they've had some dud head coaches in the past that never fired, that were fired. They've had a few of them, actually. Ron Zook, Charlie Pell. I mean, they've had a bunch. And then, the Hurricanes, they've had a few in a row now. This is really their worst run of head coaches since in a while. But I love what the Canes did in the transfer portal. You like what the Gators, how they're moving forward?
Not necessarily in 2023. I think it's going to be probably a lean year for Florida overall, but looking forward to next year, they're bringing in one of the best recruiting classes in the country. So I do think 2024 and beyond will be, back to where we saw Florida, a decade or so ago. But this season, I think they'll be decent. I think they make a bowl game, but that's not good enough for Florida fans, as we know. This is a team that's, SEC championship or bust kind of fan base. So, but I think they'll be decent.
All right, well, we'll get to them in just a minute. We'll go in between for my Miami analysis because that's where they'll fit on Friday. But anyways, if you get four main games tonight, we're going to cover two of them. The first one being in the Big Ten. The Big Ten has been doing this recently, having a few games of conference play early, and then they go back to the out-of-conference patsy schedule the Big Ten teams are known for. And then they come back out of it again because we know when the Big Ten teams, when they step it up out of conference, right, they just get crushed in the early season. And, of course, pretty much the same way they perform in the college football playoff. But Minnesota, the Flexter, in action here against the Huskers of Nebraska. New head coach at Nebraska, Matt Rule, the Flexter. New team at Minnesota. Should be an interesting one. Outdoors in a springtime or a late summer game in Minnesota, so it's probably only going to be about 16 degrees. Chris, what do you think of this one?
Well, this Jim. Well, if you missed out on the morning show, circle back here. I still like Nebraska plus the points. Minnesota. Mitch, you're going to hate me for mentioning their names again, but Tanner Morgan, Mo Ibrahim gone.
I like Ibrahim. Guys. It's Tanner Morgan I got a problem with.
I know it's Tanner Morgan okay, fair enough. But Minnesota, it's going to be a new offense. It's going to be a bit of a sort of a just like an adjustment period. And I really like Nebraska. Matt Rule, we talked about him earlier, was just a dog when he was at Baylor. He was 11-2 against the spread as an underdog in his career with the Bears, and Nebraska, they've been a thorn in the side of Minnesota. Even when Minnesota was having some of their better seasons and Nebraska was terrible. Each of the last three meetings have been decided by a touchdown. I think this one could be even tighter if Nebraska doesn't win outright. So taking Nebraska plus 7.5.
How about you, Ron?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of optimism for Nebraska this year with the new coach and Matt Rule, but I think the hype might just be a little bit too much in this one. Minnesota, a very good home team. Last year, only 2 losses at home, and those were 2 better defenses in the Big Ten, in Purdue and Iowa, close games. And, I think, obviously, like Chris mentioned, losing some key skill position players, Minnesota from last year, and Ibrahim is a big loss. But, when you look at a guy like Sean Tyler, the new transfer running back for Minnesota, I think, over 1,000 yards rushing last year, 7 rushing touchdowns. I don't think they're going to miss too much. I think Tyler will be a good replacement. I just don't know where the points are coming from Nebraska in this game. And on the road, a tough environment, conference matchup. I know it seems like a lot of points to lay, but I think it makes sense. I think Minnesota walks away with this one with a double-digit win and cover in the end.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to roll with Nebraska in this one. I think Matt Rule, I like his style of play. He makes the games a little bit ugly. When he was at Baylor, he took over a team in much worse shape than this Nebraska team. He took over a team that was riddled in scandal, probation, fired head coach, and shame. Art Briles was a good head coach, but man, the scandal that went down at Baylor. You don't. A lot of times you see these fired head coaches emerge at Western Utah State or something. Division III programs work their way back up. Not Art Briles. That's how bad it was for him. His son's still, of course, an offensive coordinator in the game, but you don't see him getting considered for any of the head coaching jobs. That's how bad the scandal was. But Matt Rule did a great job at Baylor, and it wasn't like a typical Art Briles type Baylor team either that he ran. It was like a mud game team. Every game was very, very close right into the end. Even the games that they lost were just 2 3-pointers. So I think that the game is going to be fairly close. I think Rule's going to teach his teams to compete. And I think against the Flexter, who really not known for putting the nail in the coffin type guy. He's more like there's 11 minutes left to go on the clock. Let's see if we can burn the whole thing, right? I mean, that's the way Fleck is. He starts marching up and down the sideline. He's got his papers, right? That's how he is. We know the Flexter. We've seen the Flexter. We'll see the Flexer in action tonight in this one. I'm going to take Nebraska in the points. Not a premium for me or any stretch of the imagination, but I think it might be it's probably the first time I've taken Nebraska in 5 years, Last year, remember, Nebraska opened up against Northwestern, and I think it was in Ireland, and a lot of people, or in one of those places like Ireland, Scotland, it was something like that, and a lot of people were on Nebraska. I think they were like a 10-point favorite. It was ridiculous. I mean, Northwestern beat them outright. I think under Rule, Rule got the shaft at Carolina. It just didn't give him time to put his team together. So I look for Nebraska to be just fine here. Next up. Well, Ron, is it great to be a Florida Gator, as they say. We got the Gators in this one up against Utah. Long trip out west here, also into the altitude for Florida. Ethel Mertz takes over, quarterback for the Florida Gators after his hideous career at Wisconsin. We thought Anthony Richardson was bad. It's a toss-up between him and Mertz as to who's more pathetic. You know that Graham Mertz in his first game completed like 15 consecutive passes right out of the gate, and he never completed another pass after that. That's the weird thing about it. Ron, what do you think?
Yeah, with the news that Cameron Rising is not going to be playing, or he's doubtful to play, we've seen the spread, crash, and we've seen the total really crash as well. I think the total's gone way too far down. I still think we could see a lower scoring game, but at 44 points, you don't have a ton of wiggle room there with the under. And we got to remember, I mean, last year, Utah was considered one of the best defensive teams in the Pac-12. This year, they're considered going into the season one of the best defensive teams. They still gave up almost 300 rushing yards and 7 yards per carry to Florida last season. And it was a 29-26 final score. So a pretty, high-scoring game would go way over this total. Utah ran the ball very well against Florida last year also, about 6 yards per carry, over 200 rushing yards. I don't think Graham Mertz is going to be the one that beats Utah's defense, but I do think Florida's got a really good running back group that could certainly beat them there. I think Utah is going to have some trickery packages going on with this game. If Rising's not going to be playing, they're going to have to try some different ways to get going in the passing game. You could see some weird things in those passing plays, and might find some success there. But I'm going to take the over. I think this total is just way too low now.
I like the over as well, but I think I'm just going to go straight Utah here as well. I think a little bit of revenge factor after what happened last year in the Swamp. I think Utah outplayed Florida thoroughly in that game and still ended up with the loss in the last second 2-point conversion that failed in the Swamp. Utah, I thought they outplayed Florida all the way. And, it happens, and it happens on the road in college football. But what you do is in college football, what's different than pro football, is you circle the next year's matchup and you stew on it for an entire 365 days. And that's what Utah's done here. And I think with a Kyle Whittingham defense against a pretty lifeless offense and a quarterback that's shown that under pressure, he either throws the ball to one of two places, and one is into the ground and the other one is the other team. And I think we're going to see a lot of the ball being thrown into the ground and a lot of being thrown to the other team. I like the Utah defense to outscore Florida by themselves, and I also like a lot of sacks. I expect to see a couple roughing the passers here on Utah as well. They're known for the cheap shots, so I'm going to take Utah, lay the wood and the extended on this one. I'll lay up to 2 touchdowns with the Utes.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Utah as well. Again, it was no secret that Cam Rising was probably going to be eased back into this after tearing his ACL last year. But the backup for Utah, I think he's been well prepared for this game. Still think Utah's got the better defense, and I'm still not a Graham Mertz fan myself. It was 21 interceptions the last 2 seasons. Again, he wasn't in the greatest spot in Wisconsin, but I still, that's all we have to go off of right now, and I don't think it's going to be much of an improved situation in Gainesville. So, yeah, I'm going to take Utah here. Lay the points. I think they win this one by at least a touchdown, possibly two.
All right. Good one. Next up, Tennessee and Virginia. Virginia, Armstrong gone as quarterback. I think sigh of relief coming out of the Virginia fans for that one. I mean, Mr. Turnover in the key spots. Armstrong, like I said, it was, when we talked about the NC State game this morning, he's kind of the type of guy running, who'll be running down the field and just drops the ball. It's like, especially when he's on a key first down pickup or something, it's just weird and just looks frustrated. He's always being consoled on the sideline. It's not really a good position to be in. So if you're looking to console your quarterback, well, Armstrong's great. But Virginia, they realize this. They've moved on. Meanwhile, Tennessee, kind of a rebuild there. Josh Heupel just proven what a douchebag he is last year. Just everything about him from the very first pregame interview all the way to the postgame interview. He wins. He's a crap talker. He loses. He's got an excuse, and he cries like a little baby. I hate coaches like that. And I think Tennessee goes back to where they came from, and that is a heck of a lot of losing. I think it's going to be a tough day at Rocky Top going for Virginia in this one. Chris?
I'm going to take Virginia in the points in this one. I think Joe Milton's talented. I think he's got, capable of leading this Tennessee offense. I just don't think that 28 points is right for the opener. I think that this line is still hanging on to last year's Tennessee. Virginia, yeah, they weren't a great team last year. Brennan Armstrong, now you shift to a different quarterback here. But to me, this just feels like a spot where Tennessee wins, but they win something like 38-14 or something like that, where it's a convincing victory, but still not enough to cover this number. See, 24-point win for Tennessee. So I'm going to take Virginia in the points in this one.
I'm going to go the other way, guys. I'm going to lay the points with Tennessee. Virginia, I think is scored 17 points per game last year, and I think their offense is in worse shape going into this season. On the road last year, they did not play well. They lost the first 3 road games outright to Illinois, Syracuse, Duke. Most of those first Illinois and Duke were double-digit losses, and they barely beat Georgia Tech on the road, one of the weakest teams in the ACC. And now Tennessee, yeah, you lose Hendon Hooker, but Joe Milton, he's experienced quarterback. Last year, played a few games, had 82 passing attempts, 65% completion, 10-0 touchdown interception ratio. Tennessee, this offense scored 46 points per game last year, and I just think they score at will in this matchup. I would lean towards the over here, but I also think Tennessee wins and covers the number.
All right, well, so far we don't agree on anything.
Not all three of us,
Yeah, we do not agree on one game. Let's see. Let's make sure, yep, got you there. All right. Next up, a game that a lot of people are interested in this one. We've got TCU, who, by the way, went to the national championship game last year, beat Michigan in the college football playoff pretty easily. I mean, they made it look pretty easy. They've lost some key players from this team, but let's just say there were no key players on the team going into the season last year, so how key are these guys? Gary Patterson, I think we all knew, didn't leave the cupboard bare there at TCU. I mean, he had some great recruits, and that's why he was fired. I mean, we all loved Gary Patterson. I think what TCU got sick of was that big old salary that he was toting around and really not producing the results that they were used to. Of course, Deion Sanders takes over at Colorado. A lot of hoopla and a lot of transfers and a lot of guys transferred out involuntarily. You don't really see a lot of that, in sports, college sports, or any of those things. But you do see it at Colorado. So I don't know. Chris, This is your game. You're muted.
Oh, there we go. Sorry, my dogs are snoring in the background. I didn't want them, throwing things off. But yeah, I like TCU here. The memories, I know that the rosters have changed for both of these teams. We talked about on the morning show that Colorado's brought in a bunch of guys with the Deion Sanders era starting, and TCU only lost their top 3 receivers, top 3 running backs. Max Duggan went to the NFL. But I just can't help but think that TCU is just going to reload. That's what Sonny Dykes does. He always has a dynamic offense. And the last memories I have of this Colorado Buffaloes team was them getting run over by TCU left and right last season. I was on Colorado in that game. I thought, this is a big number. They'll be able to hang around. And TCU just ran over them. I think they had the worst rushing defense in the country by like 100 yards per game last season. Or at least that's what it felt like. I think it's just one of those games where the hype is good early on, but it's just a side disappointment for Colorado fans when all's said and done and laying the points with TCU here.
Yeah, Mitch said hoopla and Chris says hype. I think it's too much hoopla and too much hype for Colorado, at least right away. I think the program's headed in the right direction, but like Mitch mentioned, a lot of players gone from last year's team, and that wasn't a good team to begin with. TCU, they lose Duggan, but we got to remember Chandler Morris actually beat Duggan for the starting job to start the season last year. So he's experienced in the system, and he's a talented quarterback. And TCU's defense still looks strong, still looks like one of the better defenses on paper in the Big 12 this year. I think TCU scores at will, and I don't think Colorado has enough answers. I think, Shedeur Sanders is a good option at quarterback, but you got to look at the rest of the team, the rest of the skill positions. At TCU, like Chris mentioned, we saw, TCU's already beat them by 25 last year. I think they beat them by 28 this year. Give me TCU by 4 touchdowns.
I think that it was, listening to Chris, I think it's a little tough to talk about being run over and all those things that you mentioned about Colorado. I mean, because the last time we saw TCU, they were getting, busted up. I don't even know. It was like one of those things where it's like you could in-game it at plus 49 and still get your ass kicked, all over the place type games. So, it was about as bad of a beatdown as you could see. It was actually worse than the Georgia Vandy game when the Georgia defensive lineman, the guy who's now on the Eagles, 2 years ago, opening play like clotheslines the Georgia running back 12 yards deep in the back, or clotheslines the Vandy running back 12 yards deep in the backfield. It was that type of game. They had some chances early, but, those chances were few and far between. And then once Georgia got ahead, well, Kirby Smart can be one of the biggest jerks in the game. No one gave us a chance. It's like the highest you were ranked was 2 all season. It's like, yeah, we disrespect. It's like, what are you talking about, man? It's like, anyways, I think Colorado might be headed in the right direction. They might not be headed in the right direction. We don't know. We don't know. I know they have some good players. We know that, right? They have Hunter. They have Deion's son, who played at the Division III level. Little different than playing against the Frogs. A lot different than playing against.
He played at FCS, Division I last year, but
who did he play at?
Jackson State.
Jackson State.
Yeah, but that's not FBS.
No, it's Division I though. It's not Division III.
Well, it's similar. All right, who would you take? South Alabama or Jackson State?
What does that have to do with anything?
But I'm just saying, it's not.
No, you should be asking who would I take, Jackson State or Micanopy State College?
No, but they're not playing. He's not playing Micanopy State today.
Wisconsin. I know. I'm just saying, give him. He's played Division I football, not Division III football. That's all I'm saying. I got TCU.
I'd be shocked if Colorado gave him a game because the world. This is what we have with Colorado. The public of publicist. Most public, right, of dogs. It is the publicest of public dog of dogs in this one with Colorado. This is the sexy choice. So Miami had a guy, Cormani McClain. He was top 5 national recruit. He would have been number 3 that Miami had in the top 10 recruits in the nation. Cormani McClain originally had signed his letter of intent with Miami. Then he switched to Colorado, went and played for Deion. The problem with Cormani McClain is Ron, do you know the issue with this guy? Even though, I mean, he's going to be an NFL great one. Like, we've been shunned by plenty of NFL cornerbacks throughout the years at Miami. Patrick Peterson, right? I mean, it goes on and on. You know, guys that originally committed and then went somewhere else. This guy, the problem is, he's 18 years old. He weighs 160 pounds. That ain't going to get it done when the running back comes barreling up the middle, because those TCU backs, we saw him last year. It wasn't like this. Fine, Dugan wasn't bad. They had the really good receiver, you know, on TCU. But really, that backfield was like a rotation of guys that could just absolutely fly and hammer it. And the last thing you want is your last thing, the guy who can actually run him down, is your 160-pound freshman corner. Oof. It's going to be a bad day. It's going to be a real bad day taking TCU, and I think this could be one of those games where they're just going to stop it. You ever see the games?
65-7.
I know it predates you guys, but the college all-stars. Did you know this? That I've said this before in shows, but did you know this, Ron? That the college all-star team used to play the Super Bowl champs.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Oh yeah. That was an idea.
Why?
What?
Why? That makes no sense.
I know. It made no sense at all. So listen to this one. The last year that they did it was 1978. So we know who won the Super Bowl in 78. It was the Steelers. They had me, Joe Green, and Jack Ham, and L.C. Greenwood, Terry Bradshaw, Lynn Swann, John Stallworth. They won 4 Super Bowls, right? It's like,
what are they thinking?
Playing against the college all-stars. They stopped the game, man, in the third quarter. Yeah. You could Google it. You can Google it. It's out there. College All-Stars versus NFL Super Bowl. It's like, it wasn't like, the last place NFL team to see if they could beat a college team or whatever. It's Super Bowl champs, and everybody played. It was like, it was horrible, man. I think this game has that sort of capabilities to it. I do. I think Colorado could be better than last year, but that's not saying much. Remember Air Force just running over them? Oof. You kind of got to ask yourself at that point, what are they doing? But I think all that transition, all that stuff, football is a team sport, man. It is and always will be. Speaking of teams, we got Steve Sarkisian and company hosting Rice. Everyone knows I'm a big Sark fan from way back. Who went first and last one, Chris? It means Ron, you get to take a shot. Those of you that are joining us late, this is our college football show. We're going to do this every single week. We did it last year. It was a little less formal. This year we've kind of updated the show. We always try and bring things up to the next level. And, we're going to do it every Wednesday at about 1 o'clock Eastern time. We might move it up to noon, depending on
Thursday or Wednesday?
Thursdays at 1. We might move it up to noon. That's the only difference there might be. But anyways, Ron, Rice against Texas. You've got a quarterback here that is the Mills MVP. He's got all of the team home and away jerseys for everybody.
That's true. Yeah. Man, this is a beauty of a game, huh? A game I'll be staying away from, but I guess I would lean towards taking the points with Rice. JT Daniels there now. I think he'll be good enough to maybe find the end zone once or twice. Texas is still going to win this game comfortably, but 35 points, a lot to lay. But yeah, other than that, no big opinions from me in this one, but I'll lean towards taking the points.
Well, everyone knows I see Steve Sarkisian. I really bet my money on the other team. I don't even think twice about it. I do what you call, the technical term for this one is I unload on the other team, and I'll be unloading on the Rice Owls in this game. I just don't see Texas being – I think what we see them doing is doing what Texas teams typically do, combined with what Steve Sarkisian teams commonly do. And that is, it really doesn't matter what Rice does because Texas will be fully capable of beating themselves. And I think that Rice will do at least enough to cover the spread. I think McCaffrey will score a touchdown. It'll be on Sports Center, like that. Like it'll show the game and then they'll show the only Rice touchdown. Like McCaffrey will be the only one that they show. And outside of that, yeah, Texas has all the bigger, faster, better players, and they always have. They always have. But the results show, well, it's been a while since Vince Young and, fourth and touchdown. So, been a fourth down and championship? Is that what they called it?
I'm not sure.
I think they called it fourth down and championship, the play where Vince Young ran it in.
Huh.
Yeah, I think they called it fourth down and championship against USC. One of the greatest single performances of any player in history. But not today. Vince isn't on this team. I'm all over the Owls like white on rice.
Oh, I forgot about that bit.
Yeah, we're breaking out we're breaking out all the A material for this one.
I'm going to take Rice as well. Part of me thinks that Texas is going to have one eye on Alabama next week. Looking ahead to that game after they're almost beating almost beating Alabama last year. And I think Rice, like Ron said, with JT Daniels coming in, gives him a steady hand at quarterback, even though it's going to be ninth school in 4 seasons or something like that. So, I think JT Daniels does enough here. Luke McCaffrey can definitely score a touchdown. I think even if Texas wins this one comfortably, like a 38-7 score, still means that Rice sneaks in the back door and covers. So I'm going to take Rice in the points.
All right, Chris, all over the Owls, like white on rice
Fried
as
rice.
well.
I'll take a side of fried rice too.
Yeah, I was waiting for that one.
It really wasn't on the menu, as they say. Take it up a notch. Indiana hosting Ohio State. I can tell you, I bet this game every single year. Every year I take Ohio State, and every year I just donate my money. I don't know how or why or anything like that, but I hate Indiana. I hate their coach. Tom Allen's still there. It's like, I don't know how. Yeah. I mean, there's no explanation to explain it. Indiana always covers against Ohio State in this game. They always, always do. I'll tell you who they don't cover against, and that's Wisconsin. But against Ohio State, they just always seem to find a way. I think the Buckeyes, also new quarterback here. Of course, great wide receivers, NFL wide receivers. Marvin Harrison Jr., I think outside Heisman candidate at least. But outside that, I don't know. I think that, when Ohio State, when he took over as coach, I really thought he was going to be one of the all-time greats. I thought he was that good. It's like, wow, man, it's Ohio State, but I actually really like this guy. And now I have a little less faith in him. Because I think if you can't win with last year's team, if you couldn't beat Michigan with last year's team, you're not going to beat them. You're not, because now Michigan has kind of turned the corner on them. And it's like, if you can't beat them with those wide receivers, then the same thing I say about Stroud and the NFL stuff. It's like, if you can't win with that, with what you got there, what is it going to take? What's it going to take? Chris, what's it going to take?
Oh, boy. Yeah, it's going to take a lot for me to feel comfortable about betting this game because, like you said, Indiana just has this weird knack of hanging around and keeping a game close that they probably have no right doing so. But I guess I'll lean towards Indiana and the points, that being the case. I still think, Ryan Day.
Ryan Day.
Yeah, Ryan Day still has not been committal about who's starting a quarterback. Kyle McCord was supposed to, be the next guy up after Stroud left, but you got a freshman in training camp that's been, turning some heads as well. And I still think it's going to take a bit of an adjustment period. It's another one of those games where I just see Indiana maybe sneaking in the back door, 38-10, Ohio State 38-17, something like that. But Yeah, I'm gonna take Indiana plus the 30.
Plus the 3 touchdowns and plus the 4 touchdowns
Four
and a safety.
touchdowns
Four
and the two.
touchdowns
Yeah,
and a safety.
yeah.
Ron?
You mentioned how Ohio State struggled in the series against the number, and they did lose every game against the spread from 2011 to 2016, but not so fast. I mean, since 2017, Ohio State's 4-2 against the spread in this matchup, and the home team's 1-6 against the number in the last 7. And Ohio State scored more than 30 points every single game since 2001 in this series. So, and we've also seen the last 6 of these games go over the total. So that's a lot of points being scored. We know who's scoring the majority of those points, and I think it's play enough points to win this game and cover the number in the end. I like Ohio State in this game. It looks like a huge number, but I don't think it'll feel like one by the third quarter.
Tom Allen going to be coaching up a storm for that one. So we're not at the halfway point. We might be past the halfway or around there. Anything on the board like prior to this time slot, like before 3 o'clock on Saturday? Any game that we didn't talk about that you think might fit the? Well, we have one more 3:30 game and then we'll do this. One more 3:30 on Saturday. It's Washington Boise. So I don't know what that is. Chris, this one is you.
This one's me. All right. Well, I'm gonna
I'm
take
gonna
the over.
sit back and listen.
To the Michael Penix Jr. Appreciation Society. And no, I'm gonna take the over 59 here. I lean towards Boise State in the points. I like this Boise State team year in and year out. I think this year is going to be no different. I do think Michael Penix Jr. can have a solid season in Washington. But I looked at this game and I just kept seeing something like 35-28, like something just like an exciting back and forth game that the Boise State has a chance to win late, but they make that late mistake, and Washington escapes with the high scoring victory. So I'm gonna take the over 59, lean towards Boise State plus the 14.5.
I like the over as well. That's what I was looking like. That's what I was looking at in this game. In 2021, the Washington defense on paper looked really strong going into the season, but all of a sudden, those teams could not stop the run. They gave up almost 5 yards per carry on the ground. They were one of the worst run defenses in college football. Going into 22, that was the big thing they were looking at to improve the defense. Stop the run, and they did exactly that. They only gave up 3.5 yards per carry. The only problem is their secondary was horrible. Instead of they couldn't stop the run. Now they can't stop the pass. The secondary doesn't look great on paper going into this season. I think Boise State's offense has improved. I think Washington's offense, just as Chris was mentioning, still really potent on paper. I like the over.
I think for me, it's like when I see the games like this, I'm kind of like, a lot of different variables, and I'm not one of these like afraid of the hook type guys. But I think I am here. I think the hook is a good place to be with the 14.5. And here's another thing you never hear from me. I think it actually sets up pretty well for a teaser, 6-point teaser, because you get 7.5, right, as well in there. You get both. So as Dave Miller, when I was doing the shows with Dave Miller and Micah, it was one of the situations that he talked about. Like you can get a number like this, and then you're going to end up with the good number at the lower side of it, if you tease it, if you go. Actually, maybe he's talking the other side of it. Anyways, I'm taking Boise either way. I don't care. Maybe I confused myself.
You talked yourself right out of a cover.
Yes, I did. But I'll take the 14.5 with Boise State. Boise's, last year, they've been under transition a few years with coaches as well. But I think now, we started to see them improve last season, and I think towards in the second half of the year, and I expect them to be decent this year as well. Boise, they're not a novelty act anymore. They're just not, and I think playing in these big games is why you go to Boise. That and the blue turf. It's kind of like why Ruffolo got involved in sports handicapping for the chicks.
Guilty.
Anyways, so is there any games on the board that are on the board before 3:30 Eastern time that you guys, Chris, that we didn't talk about? It could be Thursday, it could be tonight, it could be Friday, or it could be, early Saturday. Anything there?
The one game that really stood out to me was just, and I know that they got a transfer in Cade McNamara, but at quarterback, but I don't know how I was laying 25 points against anybody. I mean, I know Utah State wasn't very good last year, and they haven't really done much to improve that roster. But I mean, this was an Iowa team that struggled to get past South Dakota State, and they were like third worst in the country in total offense, or it's either total offense or scoring offense, and bottom 10. They were bottom 10 in both. That's all that mattered to me. Cade McNamara coming in doesn't move the needle for me with that Iowa offense. It just doesn't. And I just don't know how they're laying 25 points against anybody. That was the one that really jumped off the page for me.
How about you, Ron?
Well, nothing jumped off the page for me, but I am looking at this Northern Illinois Boston College game. I think we go over the total there. I think Boston College has its best offense on paper in years. I mean, we know this team is pretty good defensively, but they have struggled to score points for quite some time. I think they do here against a MAC defense. I would think I think the MAC is one of the weakest defensive conferences in college football. But I also think bringing back Rocky Lombardi at NIU, one of my favorite quarterbacks in college football, this Huskies offense looks strong as well, and I think we get over this total.
I like Iowa to pound Utah State. Utah State was absolutely hideous last season. Iowa lost two of its linebackers, and we know the Iowa offense was terrible most of the season too. But I think their offense is going to be improved. It's not going to have to improve much. Utah State is not a good team. I mean, they're terrible. So I like Iowa in that one. The other one is I like Miami against Miami. I think that Miami is the better team.
Miami's pretty good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go Canes.
Just a shame that Miami's going to lose that game.
Yet win at the same time. It's like when I was a kid, they used to always call us Miami FL. It's before we were any good. Then it became Miami, and they were Miami OH. Someone's got to go. I'm missing some of these things. I think I deleted them. I think I messed up our whole thing, Chris.
You talked yourself right out of a cover.
No, I didn't talk myself out of the cover. I lost the graphics on LSU Florida State.
Oh boy.
Yeah. We're gonna go naked on that one. Let's see. I've lost a few graphics here.
Threaten me with a good time.
Oh boy.
Oh shoot! I also lost Penn State, West Virginia.
Going naked with Chris Ruffolo on a Thursday, huh?
I lost Penn State, West Virginia. Do you have those still, Chris?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, if you could load those up for me again, that'd be awesome.
Yep.
We got USC and Nevada. Interesting. USC kind of Lincoln Riley did last week. It looked exactly like a Lincoln Riley team. No different than anything we'd have seen in the last however many years Lincoln Riley's been coaching. Ron, did you see anything last week from USC that makes you believe that they compete with a good team?
No. I worry about that defense. I mean, San Jose State
What
last
defense?
year could.
What defense?
I know, there you go. I mean, last year San Jose State could not run the ball. Their offensive line was one of the worst in college football, yet they ran for over almost 5 yards per carry against San Jose State. Actually, no, excuse me. They ran for over 7 yards per carry against USC last week and almost 200 rushing yards. That's very scary for me if I'm a USC fan. And, Nevada's got a rough offense on paper. I'd say even worse than San Jose State, so it makes this game pretty tough. But, 38 points, that's a lot of lumber. I'll take the points with Nevada. Hope for the best.
I'm with Ron. I get religious about college football, and I might have to pray for the cover in this one. USC.
We are.
USC is kind of. I just can't lay a lot of points with Lincoln Riley teams. I know they're going to score points. We know they're going to score, but they were a sieve against San Jose State last week. A sieve. And the thing is, we've seen Lincoln. It wasn't like, oh well, his first game. They get used to it. They look exactly like every Lincoln Riley defense I've ever seen. They just give up points in bunches. And you know what they're the king of? The college football logo that happened a few years ago. Ruffolo is familiar with this one. The chunk play. Right? The chunk play. They're the kings of giving up the chunk. I mean, it's first and 10, it's second and 1. I mean, all the way down the field on these guys. They are in second and short every single time. You can't win championships like that. I don't even think they're going to win the Pac-12. They're going to get stomped in the Big Ten. Even Wisconsin's going to beat them. Wisconsin's going to be better. You think Wisconsin will be improved this year? Luke Fickell?
Yep. I really like Wisconsin this year.
He was not good at Ohio State. He was great at Cincinnati. But I think they're going to be improved. I think they might be a year away. They always get good players. I don't care what Ethel Mertz says. And the Ethel Mertz apologists. Oh, Wisconsin had bad players. Like, what?
Calm down.
They had like the number 1 defense in college football most of the year. Sorry state of affairs. Speaking of which, Chris, what do you think? Nevada USC.
I didn't know if that was transitioning to me or not. I'm going to take Nevada in the points as well. I think USC, they were, well, it was probably a little bit of focus. They had their focus on San Jose State last week, and I think Nevada was able to watch that game with USC. Know what they have to do. They've had their whole offseason to prep for this game. I think USC, they only have a week to prepare for Nevada. It's not saying much, but I think that, you can give up 28 points or however many they did to San Jose State. Nevada can do enough to keep this one within 5 touchdowns and a field goal. So give me Nevada in the points as well.
All right, now I've lost all the rest of the graphics. I've only got the 2 that you just sent.
What are you doing over there?
I'm missing UTSA and Houston, the Oregon State game, and Florida.
Hold on.
I'm up anyway, so you got some time. We have Penn State taking on West Virginia. This, outside of that TCU game, this could be the beatdown of the day. This has all kinds of beatdown potential. Now, James Clark, he badmouthed me yesterday on the show for saying, that I thought that this was going to be the beatdown of the day. I thought that the Wyoming Texas Tech is going to be the toughest to score points in. But I think this one is going to be the most one-sided, lopsided beatdown of the day. And I love the first half as well in this one. Penn State has like one of the fastest guys in the nation on their team, man. And I don't think West Virginia is going to be able to lay a glove on this guy. West Virginia's defense is terrible. Terrible. Their whole offensive strategy is going to be based to keep their defense off the field. And I don't think they're going to do it. I think Penn State whips their ass. I would lay extended here up to like 34.5 and plus. And then some. Chris?
Yeah, I feel a lot better about Penn State and their offense now that there's no more Sean Clifford. I'll say that much. I think Neil Brown's butt definitely on.
Watch it there.
What?
I like Sean Clifford. Career-leading passer in Penn State history. Put some respect on his name. Carry on.
Okay, he's a walking bag of dog crap. Anyways, Neil Brown, I think he's going to have definitely a hot seat, for much of the season, if he even lasts the entire season. I think he's like the odds-on favorite to be the first coach fired out of in FBS. So, yeah, I think it starts early. I think Penn State, they've got a great quarterback lined up in Drew Aller, former 5-star recruit. Yeah, I think this one's going to get ugly. Penn State's offense only got better, adding in Dante Cephas, one of the best receivers from the MAC last year. So I'm going to take Penn State. I'm going to probably go extended as well, maybe 27.5.
I think they're going to whip their ass. Ron, what do you think?
I agree. I'd say put some more respect on Sean Clifford's name, the career leading passer in Penn State history, a pretty history program. However, Drew Aller, I don't think they're going to be missing too much. I don't think they're going to miss a beat with him. I think he's a very good quarterback. He knows the system. Played 60 passing attempts last year with Penn State. I mean, how often do you see a team win the Rose Bowl, lose their career leading passer in program history, and then still be ranked inside the top 10 going into the next year and have a lot of expectations if they're not named Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, those types of teams. I mean, Penn State, this is a really good team on both sides of the ball. I think I agree with Mitch. The defense for West Virginia not going to cut it, but even the offense, I think, is in worse shape with an inexperienced quarterback there. Give me the Nittany Lions laying the big number.
Yeah, I've got no problem with it in that one. I'll tell you that much. That's, I think, one of the better plays. On the show yesterday on the drive-thru, I gave out the under in that Wyoming-Texas Tech game. I don't think Wyoming's going to score a point either in that game, but I think their defense is rock solid. Yeah. 10 returning starters, and also their entire second-string returns. So a lot of players. Last year, remember we had Wyoming in the opening week as well up against Illinois, at Illinois, and I kind of liked Wyoming in that game. We don't have the slide on this one or anything, so it doesn't really matter. But Texas Tech had a first-round draft choice on their defensive line. Top 10 guy. And I think they have a bunch of other guys, too, that are pretty good. Texas Tech led the Big 12 in sacks last season. I think they're going to really blitz this Wyoming offense, pretty something fierce. And I think Wyoming's defense is probably good enough to keep it within the number. I think we could have a shutout. I don't think Josh Allen's playing in that.
3-0.
Yeah, I think it's like the under. This one is, when you look at the sharp action and all that other stuff, and you just look at pure line movement, I mean, this line's dropping like a rock. Every time I look at it, it's down. So, this is one I'm looking at. What do you think of that game, Chris? Any opinions?
No, I like the under too. Yeah, I definitely can get on board with it with you. It's already dropped 1.5. I think it's going to drop even further.
Ron, you think and on your radar at all?
Yeah, I was honestly looking at Wyoming plus the points because I do think it's going to be low scoring. I think there's value getting 2 touchdowns if it's a under all the way. So under in Wyoming for me.
Well, Houston at UTSA, we all know Houston can't carry a tune anymore. It's all over. But the Clayton Tune era is over. At Houston, who's up?
I think it's me.
It's Ron.
Yeah, I'm going to go UTSA here. I just don't think that Donovan Smith and the Houston offense can go score for score with this experienced UTSA offense. And I like Donovan Smith and the transfer from Texas Tech, but I do think he has some decision-making issues. UTSA, we know them for Frank Harris and the potent offense, but this is also a very strong defense. And now this is their first season in the AAC, and they're one of the favorites to win the conference for good reason in their first year. We don't usually see that, but yeah, I mean, it's a revenge game. UTSA lost last year in triple overtime. Really, one of the better games in the early part of the season last year. I think we see the same thing this year. I think it's gonna be a close game, but you don't have to lay a big number on the road, or it's actually a neutral site, I believe. But I'll take UTSA and I take them on the money line. Decent price.
I'm on UTSA too. That's why I picked this one, is because last year's game was so good. It's not like it's a stellar opening week card. It's a good card, but I think we've had bigger matchups than this on week one. And one year they had just all big matchups. This one is a neutral siter, I believe. Like Ron said, I think last year was a neutral siter too. These schools are really not all that far apart from each other. San Antonio and Houston. Well, maybe they are. Who the hell knows? But I like UTSA. I like seventh-year quarterbacks, and I think that this could be the seventh-year quarterback you really want to have your money behind. I think Houston might take a little bit of a step back because Tune was there for so long. Chris?
Yeah, you're getting a completely different quarterback with Smith than Tune.
Chris, we know you're a Tune apologist.
I am a Tune apologist, but you know what? I think he's going to be replaced on Mount Ruffmore with Frank Harris here. I really like Frank Harris. I like this UTSA offense, and I just like how much carryover they have. And like Ron said, I think it speaks volumes that this team is favored to win the AAC in their first year in the conference. So give me UTSA in this one. I might even be inclined to lay a couple points with them, try to get a little bit more value.
I think Frank Harris could play in the NFL.
Yeah, I think so.
I do. Or maybe he can't. Either he can or he can't.
Well, which one is it?
Well, he can or he can't. San Jose State, we moved to Sunday action. 3 games on the card, I believe, for Sunday this year. Usually there's 2. This year there's 3. They've decided to go with the Monday game as like the crap game. A second year in a row that they've done that. This is about as bad as so Alabama used to always be in the opening night game. That Chick-fil-A game, the game in Georgia. Not this year, They had a run of those, but San Jose State, Oregon State, interesting game. We saw San Jose State in week 1 against USC. We talked about the USC no defense already. Cordero's been, he's one of those guys that it's like he might not be at the same school, but he is a starter his entire career. He started at Hawaii. He's starting here at San Jose State, and he's pretty good. And Gouglier, or however you say it. How do you say his name?
DJ, I think it's the most, or kind of accurate, but DJ Uaungalele.
Exactly. At Oregon State, same quarterback, different team. Similar colors, but not the same. I don't care. It's like you sucked at Clemson where you had everybody and everything. Like, you're not going to be better with less. Kind of the C.J. Stroud theory, It's like you had everything at Ohio State. You think you're going to be better with the Houston Texans, like where you don't have the edge at every single position against your opponent? All of a sudden you're going to be good? How stupid is that? I think it's the same story here. I'm going San Jose State plus the points. Possible money line outright underdog winner.
Yeah, I like San Jose State as well. I think DJU left Clemson because he knew that Cade Klubnik was going to be the guy the whole way. So we wanted to at least get some playing time somewhere. And it says someone that Oregon State was the team that would take him. So,
yeah, but it's not a matter of him. We're not arguing if Klubnik's going to be the guy and leaving Clemson.
No,
it just doesn't make him any better. No matter he could have gone to Montana. I don't care. He's not going to be any better.
No, I know. I just think he wanted to have, he knows what he is. He's not the greatest quarterback out there, even though he was highly touted as such. So, yeah, I think that there's enough weapons for San Jose State to compete in this one. They've been really good at home the last few seasons. This just feels like a 10 to 14 point game if San Jose State doesn't win it outright. So, yeah, give me San Jose State in the points.
I think DJ Uiagalelei, as Ron calls him, is the biggest college football flop since Anthony Richardson.
And if you're going to say it as Ron says it, you got to say it correctly.
Uiagalelei.
I think you just called him Ugly Lady.
You're removing syllables every time you say it. I'm going to take the over here. I'm not a fan of DJU as well, but I mentioned the San Jose State defense lost a lot in the offseason, and we saw what happened with USC. And I know it's not USC here, but still a Pac-12 offense. I still think will be able to put up some points. But San Jose State's offense looks much improved. I was worried about the offensive line, but like we just talked about, they only gave up 1 sack. They ran for 7 yards per carry. Cordero's a talented, experienced quarterback. Give me the over.
Over.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's Ruffolo in your way out of it without passing. That's how Chris does it on the morning show. It's like, how about if I give out the over instead? It's like, I don't know. Zach Wheeler pitching tomorrow.
Could be a potential premium play for me in that game.
Oregon State.
All those
things. San Jose. Which one would be the premium?
Can't say.
Florida State against LSU. It's a rematch of last year's game, which was a real gem. There was a lot of last year, it was kind of almost like a foregone conclusion that LSU was going to kick their ass. And then Knowles came in and played really, really well, right down to the end. Brian Kelly's never won the big one. There's no reason he never really beats SEC teams in the big one. So why he would be successful in the SEC at LSU, I think there's a lot of hype and very little substance. Florida State, these guys, they live in the largest talent pool in the country. They get second choice of the talent, and they usually do pretty well with it. They also do well out of state. Florida State started as a girls' school. Did you know that, Chris?
I did not.
Yeah, when I was in college, I know that Florida State, women outnumbered men 12-1 at Florida State still to then. And I think it's still like 7-1. Yeah. It used to be all girls school. You know that, Ron?
I heard something along those lines, yeah.
Ron pays no attention to Florida State.
No, not much. I try not to.
Well, it is Florida State against LSU. Chris, this is the last pick of the show. This is kind of the feature game. The Monday game sucks. It's Clemson and Duke, and I refuse to really talk about it any further except for that. We'll talk about it on Monday's show. I'll put it down again. I don't understand how you make that the solo game of the weekend, like where you just have one featured game. I could see putting this game there. I could see putting the Washington-Boise game there even. Even more so than that one. I could see, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of games.
They did this last year with Georgia Tech and Clemson.
Yeah, and it was the same thing. He put Klubnik in at the end of the game.
Yeah.
And he ran in a touchdown. Well, we're just trying to work on some things.
If I'm not mistaken, that was a pretty rough beat if you had Georgia Tech plus the points.
Yeah.
It was rather close for most of the game.
Yeah, and then Klubnik, they put Klubnik in and let him run the offense down the field. But Clemson also has another good backup QB. They have another QB problem.
Of course they do. They have a factory, yeah.
Yeah, they have another good backup QB. So Klubnik, I don't think is 100%. They love him, but
Not sure.
I'm not a big guy, but I will say Klubnik looks a little small back there. Just saying. He looked terrible in the bowl game, too. Terrible. You always remember the ones that leave a mark. Yeah. Chris?
Yeah, well, I'm going to go probably same game parlaying this. So I'm going to take Florida State in the points. I'm going to take the over 57. I think it's going to be back and forth, heavyweight battle, great quarterback play. But in the end, I just think that Florida State, just the slightly better team here. And that, like you said, that loss for LSU against Purdue still stings me a little bit. So I know new year, new team, but I still think that Florida State's got the cards here, especially this game being so big to their season right out of the gate. I think Florida State gets it done. So you Florida State in the points and give me the over.
Ron.
Yeah, I like Florida State as well. This game's going to be in Orlando. I think both teams will travel well for this one, but Florida State's super experienced on both sides of the ball. Obviously, offensively, Jordan Travis back. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of his game, but I do think he's really developed into a really solid option at quarterback in the ACC, and more of a dual threat quarterback too. And I like Chris. I do think the over is to play here as well as far as the total, but I think we see it's going to be a good game. There's a reason why it's a Sunday night game with a small spread, and it's a rematch from last year, a revenge spot. It's going to be a close game, I think, and I think Florida State takes it in the end.
Didn't Florida State miss an extra point or something last year?
LSU did, yeah.
LSU did. They won, though,
Florida
right?
State won.
They still won.
Florida State won, yeah.
Florida State won.
Yeah, 24-23.
Yeah, I like Florida State again. I think they beat them badly this time. I think sometimes you see it's close game one day, bigger margin the next time, and I think that's what we see in this one. I think LSU might be the most overrated team in the nation. They're up there with Texas A&M.
I knew. But to say, you sure you're forgetting Texas A&M? I know you don't like them.
I mean, Texas A&M is still overrated, even though all those recruits from that number one recruiting class left. It's like they took the money and ran. I think in this one, though, I just think Florida State is ready to take it to the next level, and I think we're about a year away from Miami and Florida State being, a rivalry that decides championships again. I think it's going to be very, very close. There was a span, 23 out of 25 years, the winner of the Miami-Florida State game had a say in who won the national championship or who played there was a span of 23 of 25 years where either the winner of the Miami-Florida State game or a team that beat the winner, Miami or Florida State, won the national championship. There was a span of 23 of 25 years. And I think that while they might not get back to that level, I wouldn't be surprised if both these teams become highly relevant in the near future in college football. I do believe that the image licensing game, while it's still teams are still working their way around. Like Nick Saban cried a river about Texas A&M's image licensing. Meanwhile, he had the #1 recruiting class this year, and there was no crying about image licensing, right? So we know, also, we'll show you what we gave. It showed nothing. I just say, I'm a Miami fan. I'm from Miami. We invented paying players. We just got to figure this thing out.
Well, you gotta get a new stadium.
Well, they play in the Dolphins Stadium.
I know, but like 6 people show up because it's not even close to the campus.
No one's ever showed up for the Miami games, even when they were great teams. It really doesn't matter. They also put more players in the NFL than anybody else, and still do. And
but
still do.
Not anymore. Not anymore.
Yeah, well, they're up there. They're up there, and the players
in the NIL world, they're going to need to get some more excitement in the fan base.
This is the way that Miami used to do it with the in the pre-NIL world. They say, "Here, you see this?" They take them to the beach. And they say, "You see this? It's either this, or you can go to Happy Valley, Pennsylvania, where they're coal mining. You have a choice. Either come here, and here's our trophy case, or you can go there." And you know who else they tried that on? Joe Paterno, and he took some time to think about it. Joe Paterno, like when they offered him the Miami job, he didn't shoot them down. He said, "I got to think about it." And then he came back like a week later, and he said, "This is where I'm at." He goes, "I would love to coach that kind of talent. I would love to have my school in that position in the country where I don't really even have to go anywhere to recruit. I'm right there." He said, "But I'm here, and this is where I'm at." And he's like, "I'm happy here. This is my legacy, but man, I would certainly love to give it a try sometime." And I think even you look at the Canes, even though they have been down, you look at the players that they have put in the NFL recently, and they're all stars. I mean, they're stars of stars. They don't come in with the high billing that some of these other guys, but you don't have Alex Leatherwood, busting out of the NFL, and, the guys that are getting caught the Ruggs and these other type of players coming out of Miami. You got Greg Rousseau, who's probably going to be the best defensive lineman in the NFL within a year or two. You got Jalen Phillips, who's headed to be one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. And you get guys like Braxton Berrios, who just catch footballs. And I think you got a lot of guys like this coming out of Miami, and I think they're headed in the right direction. A lot better than Anthony Richardson and company. Anyways.
Had to throw that in there.
I will continue to. But I'm also the guy, I say this all the time, I clarify it. I bashed the Patrick Mahomes pick when the Chiefs traded up for him. I said Watson. I said Deshaun Watson was the pick there. I can't believe they took Mahomes. I can't believe they traded up. It's like, these guys don't know what they're doing. Oh, believe me, I went on and on and on about it. Like, same as Trey Lance. I went on and on about it, right? I was wrong. So I'm not right all the time, but I am right a lot. So,
you are. You're right a lot, but you're not right where they are.
Way right, man. This guy sucks. I mean,
no, he doesn't.
He doesn't have the football. He doesn't have it.
IQ?
Yeah. He just doesn't have it. Like some guys, they just have it.
The gene.
Like Brett Favre. Like Brett Favre, when he came out of Southern Miss, second round draft choice, it's like, this guy's got it. Like, that was like, so in college, like this was before there was like, zillions of games on. Florida State plays Southern Miss, Brett Favre lights them up. Florida State was number 1 in the country. Southern Miss, some guy, Bobby Bowden's like, this Brett Favre guy is going to be pretty good someday. He's like, lit them up, you know? It was like, oh, man. You know, and I think that's the type of thing that you see in college football, but you don't see these overrated nobodies emerge onto the NFL scene and just bust out to be something. It's not like Anthony Richardson played at Alcorn State, you know? He played at
Where did Josh Allen play?
What?
Where did Josh Allen play?
He played at Wyoming.
Now he's a superstar.
Right. Well, you can be a superstar at a lesser school. You can't be a bum at a big school and all of a sudden be great when you get to the NFL. It's not like, oh, he didn't have the supporting cast, you know? It's like none of those things. Like Aaron Rodgers at Cal was awesome, right? I mean, he was great at Cal. He still got pushed back in the draft. Anthony Richardson drafted way higher than him. Ben Roethlisberger, Miami of Ohio. Same thing. He was great at Miami of Ohio, though. He wasn't like a bum at Miami of Ohio that's like, oh, this guy's big and can throw a football. You know? It's like, he was great.
Well, another thing is, I don't know off the top of my head, but I mean, how many years did Rodgers play at Cal?
Then it's irrelevant to the conversation because
Richardson only played like a year and a half of college.
Then why would he leave?
Because he's young and he wants to make the money. I mean, if he's going to be a top 5
the money's there. Florida, they're paying. They're paying.
I know, but
Florida.
why not?
They're paying.
I mean, not lottery money.
Oh yeah, they are.
Issue with Florida,
$13.1 million for 4 years is the number they're paying in Florida for a walk-on for a freshman quarterback that's never played it down. $13.1 million for 4 years is what Florida's paying. That's out.
Rashada.
That's the one that's out. Right? $13.1 million for 4 years.
Well, I'm not sure, but they didn't pay Rashada.
Right. They didn't pay him. They were like, no way. You can only imagine what these Alabama guys are making. We have a lot of time to talk about this season. Thanks to everybody that tuned in. I think we had a little bit bigger live audience than we had last season, and that's a good thing. And I think it'll get bigger as the weeks goes on. It's going to be Thursdays, 1 o'clock. If not 12 o'clock, we'll have to figure it out. I'd like to do 12 o'clock. The problem is we have the morning show before this. So the morning show, Chris gets a little long-winded. The show gets pushed back. Exactly. But I think we could probably do 12:30 even. Today I didn't have the graphics ready. Chris Ruffolo did all the graphics today. I appreciate that. But normally I have all the graphics locked and loaded. We'll have everything set. This is, we blew week 0 too. Thanks everyone though. We appreciate you. Chris, anything you got to say for yourself?
No, just excited for college football season.
Ron?
Insert cliche statement about college football here.
Mm-hmm. It's great to be a Florida Gator. It's great to be. Every school has the same chant. It's great to be a Miami Hurricane. It's great to be Miami Hurricanes. We have the really complicated cheer though. CANESK. Thanks, everybody. It's been awesome. I'll see you guys next week. Appreciate all of you. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning.